I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, June the 21st, and Joplin's got a big yearling special coming up for the regular Monday sale. And you know, they saw El Reno's big show there with 10,000 head of yearling feeders on Wednesday, and they said, okay, I'll see that, and I'll come back with 6 or 7 or 8,000 head of yearlings, maybe 100 loads on Monday, and then the following Tuesday, not the next day, but the following Tuesday, we'll come back with 50,000 for the prime time livestock video auction there at Downstream Casino in Quapaw, Oklahoma, which is just west of Joplin, right on I-44 there. But Jackie thinks they'll have 100 pot loads of yearling feeders this coming Monday. And I've got one consignment of 1,000 head of yearling steers right there, but I tell you what, those cattle will be coming right off fescue. But they did note that it's been fairly cool so far this year, and very few of the cattle are carrying any fescue hair, if you guys know what that is. I had a woman with fescue hair one time, and it didn't bother her a bit. But sometimes those cattle are kind of hurt if you've had a hot early summer or late spring there. They get that long fescue hair, and all they want to do is stand in the ponds or get in the shade. But not that many of them this time. Most of them are slicked off, and that fescue grass is starting to get kind of tough. And anything that you want to feed them, they'll be glad to have, guys. And they'll really explode for you. Be all green yearlings there, very little supplemental feeding, and in that part of the country, any supplemental feeding they would have given would have been with a 5-gallon bucket, not a truck or anything like that. But don't forget to watch. If you want to bid online at dvauction.com, you can view and bid right there online. If you're interested in buying several loads of those commodity cattle, you might want to call them ahead of time and give them a heads up, because they do not jack around. When they get to selling those cattle, they will absolutely roll. But if you want to get on DV Auction and bid on those cattle, you can sure do it right there. dvauction.com. They'll start early on Monday morning selling those cattle at Joplin Regional Stockyards. Don't forget the following Tuesday, not the next day, but the following Tuesday on July the 2nd, I'm going to be there at the Primetime Livestock Video Auction at Downstream Casino in Quapaw, Oklahoma, just right across the line, just west of Joplin there. They've got 50,000 head on offer. They're going to have a nice lunch there at 11:30. Then the sale starts at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But don't forget that. Let's talk about the board on Thursday. June live cattle futures down 32 cents at 108.17. August down 60 cents at 103.95. August feeder cattle down 182 at 134.70. September down 162 at 135.37. Your board was hanging in there in the morning in the early session there, kind of balancing, mostly down just a pinch, but not much at all. But then when they saw the rest of the fat cattle trade puke at 110, then it just kind of lost all of its hold there and really dumped, and it actually hurt the feeder cattle more than it did the fat cattle futures. But these packer margins are unbelievable, guys. I know we had record packer margins this time last year, but we're right there again, guys. And depending on how you figure it, and I'm not sure you're going to get an honest figure on there, some of these cattle these packers are killing would make well over $300 a head. And it's just, and even on a conservative figure, it's into the 200s pretty easy, and you think that's not fun for them. And you would think they would get even more aggressive and try to kill all they can, but they're not in any hurry. They're going to get them all anyway, so what the heck? It's kind of like the old bull and the young bull, you know. There's no need to get in a big hurry. But your fat cattle trade did finish up on Thursday down in the Southern Plains, Texas and Kansas, everything at 110. That's $2 to $3 lower, and actually when the board closed lower and they got the bulk of the trade out of the way, they backed those bids up to 109. So that 110 is not available in the Southern Plains any longer. Iowa sold some cattle on Thursday. They're getting where they sell a pretty good slug just about every day, and like I said on the last visit, that they're selling at a premium to every other region in the 5 area. And it's because they got such good cattle up there, and they've got those regional packers coming to them to get those really high quality cattle up there. 4,200 head in Iowa on Thursday, confirmed there, from 112 to 115, which is way better than any place else, but still weak to $2 lower than last week. 178 to 182 dressed, $3 to $6 lower, but mostly 180, 181. Nebraska, 12,500 head confirmed, but there will be a lot more than that actually traded. 110 in Nebraska too. That's kind of tough, guys. That's $2 to $5 lower than the bulk of last week's trade. And 178 to 183, sure, $3 to $5 lower. But a lot of that 180, 181, mostly 180 really on Thursday, and then when they got a lot of their needs filled, they backed right back up to 178. But these packers are playing hardball, guys. They're going to get these cattle bought as cheap as they possibly can right here when they've got the best grilling demand. They've got a big choice select spread, and there's a lot of these cattle that are grading pretty well. Although we are down in our grading, but not down to where we normally are. We're just down compared to what they were grading earlier in the year. This instrument grading's got everything grading so well anymore, but they are down a bit from that, which actually means that we are current in our sales. Even though we're hitting record numbers, biggest numbers we've seen for a long time of market-ready cattle, we're still pretty current going into it. I mean, the guys have been going into it with their eyes wide open. They've been shucking these cattle. Of course, we've been losing market position all spring, and they're going into this pretty good shape. And as soon as we start to get over the hump a little bit, we should see some light at the end of the tunnel. Box beef cutout values lower on Thursday afternoon and lower compared to the bulk of sales last week. Not so much on choice, but especially on select. But choice cuts Thursday afternoon, 220.72, down 87 cents for the day, and selects at 201.48, down 76 cents. Your slaughter has been just a little bit off of last week, but we had a huge week last week. But 482,000 through Thursday. That's 3,000 less than the previous week. 10,000 more than the same week a year ago. And remember, a year ago, our slaughter was up 2.5%. And we're keep continuing to run ahead of that. So we're getting rid of these cattle. There's plenty of demand. I know we've got fake meat out there. I know we got pressure on the board, and it seems like we just can't catch a break. But they're getting rid of the cattle, getting rid of the meat, and our beef demand is excellent, both for export and domestic. But let's talk about your feeder cattle markets. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central late in the day on Thursday sitting at 131.27, down another 70 cents. It's just been kind of steady week all this past week, or this week, and just with a lot of cattle selling in spots. Most of your sales aren't selling every week right now, especially in the northern plains, in the Midwest. They're kind of jumping around. But we've seen a lot of yearling sell. I mentioned those 10,000 head that sold in El Reno, and that many southern plains cattle selling with nothing to offset it in the northern plains, hardly at all. There hasn't been hardly any good sales in the northern plains this week, and it's just going to take it down a little bit. But you look at the big sales on Thursday. Pratt, Kansas had a big sale, 3,700 head. Feeder steers there, just kind of unevenly steady, and that's kind of the way it's been all day on Thursday and most of the sales that I looked at. But the feeder steers mostly steady, some as much as $3 lower, but then the feeder heifers $3 to $5 higher. Just kind of depends on how those cattle are penciling, who's at the sale, and what their orders are. Of course, that's the way it always is. But look at this individual quote out of Pratt. 59 head of steers weighed 887 at 137.10. You see some stick out deals there. I guarantee you that's no lower. That's got to be higher than what they had the last week or two. Mitchell, South Dakota, 2,100 head there, unevenly steady from $3 lower to $3 higher, just depending on specific weights. But an individual quote, 62 head of 923 pound steers in Mitchell bring 130 and a quarter. That's a pretty good price there. They did have the Superior Tall Grass Special out of Pahuska there in the Osage, Oklahoma on Thursday. Superior had that, and all those cattle were selling pretty well. Most of them won't deliver until they get to the end of the double stock period there. Most of them will be mid to late part of July on the delivery. Those cattle are selling at a premium to what cattle are bringing right now. I would say that they will continue to get that way. The best demand we see all year and the best feeding cattle that you'll see all year is right there. But they had Osage and Flint Hill cattle in there. Had some other cattle mixed around in Texas and the southeastern places too. But everybody was there to kind of see where they were going to set the market on an 850-pound steer to deliver mid to late July. And most of those were selling right in the low 40s, 141, 142, right in there. Some of them that had bells and whistles were launching on past that, but most all the cattle, even just the commodity cattle, right there in the low 140s. That's kind of set your market for your Osage and Flint Hill delivery cattle this summer. I wouldn't be surprised when we get there, as we get into some of those really featured reputation strings that come off every year. The guys are not going to like that because they're not going to make any money at that price, but they may end up getting a little more for them. And if the guys don't like the price at all, remember, guys send cattle to the sale when the market's really, really good, or when it's really not very good and they're not making any money because they figure, you know, what the heck, let's roll the dice. There could be a lot of those Flint Hill Osage cattle that show up in those sale barns, and then you get those same buyers that want them across from each other with a little bit of speed and confusion and a good auctioneer, some hamburger grease smell, cigarette smoke, and dust and everything that goes along with, and they might bring a little bit more than that. But good demand for those cattle. Those cattle might gain 6 pounds a day. You never know. But your best quote that I saw all day on Thursday come out of Columbus Sales Pavilion, Columbus, Nebraska, 56 head of 797-pound steers. They weighed 8, but the front figure was still a 7, made them bring 145.60. That's your feeder flash for Friday.